Hello and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music with me, the 80s Mixtaper. You join us late in 1980 as in this playlist we enter December. The Christmas number one slot has already been decided, as we discovered in the last episode, by St Winifred's School Choir with Grandma, but there's still some phenomenal tracks left in the year. In this episode, we get Madness's most socially conscious song, one of the most 80s Christmas songs imaginable. We meet Chaz and Dave and end with Adamant declaring that him and his kind are taking over the charts for the foreseeable. This week we had an outpouring of love on TikTok for the Hazel O'Connor song 8th Day, with a number of people really recommending the entire album. Simon Alden writes, great song, great album too. Raymond Ray 006 adds, Breaking Glass, the only album where every single track is actually awesome. And Scott Wilson 995 added, only 3 hits, a crime. So I went back and had a listen and can indeed verify that if you're interested in the early 80s, do give Breaking Glass a listen. It's a thoroughly excellent album. I'm always slightly surprised that Hazel O'Connor didn't have a bigger pop career, to be honest. We do love your musings or corrections here, so do hit us up on all your socials where you'll find me as the 80s Mixtaper, or do email in at icompleted80smusic@aol.com. That's icompleted80smusic@aol.com. And now it's back to the music. 4-hour track 8 today. We are back with the Nutty Boys. Let's talk about Madness in late 1980, because it's an incredibly tightrope year for them. Not in terms of success, they're flying, they're peaking, they're scar-suited icons by now, but in terms of what they do with that success. So, Embarrassment, the 7th single by Madness, released in November 1980, written primarily by saxophonist Lee Thompson. It's one of the most startling songs in their repertoire. A big, bold, tragic-sounding minor key stomper with all the Madness hallmarks. Jauntiness, swing, a bounce in the step, twisted into something cold, confrontational, and deeply personal. It's not their biggest track, but it might be their most important. Press play now. Embarrassment peaked at number 4 on the official UK singles chart in January 1981. It stayed in the top 40 for 12 weeks. Commercially successful, yes, but it's also the first Madness single that sounds like it's got blood in its teeth. And it's all coming from Lee J. Thompson. Thompson wrote the lyrics after a very real family crisis. His teenage sister Tracy, white and working class, became pregnant by a black man. The reaction from parts of their family, the surrounding community, was immediate, loud, and vicious. Total rejection, Thompson would later say. She was 17, the news blew the family apart, and Thompson turned around and made a song out of it. Embarrassment is exactly what it says. It's a howl of shame, not directed at the girl, but at everyone else for how they responded to her. There's no metaphor here, no coyness. It opens with a funeral organ line that could be straight out of a horror film, setting a stage not of heartbreak or heartbreakers, not the usual Madness bounce, but of intergenerational crisis and panic. The lyrics open with a letter. Received a letter just the other day. Don't seem they want to know you no more. They've laid it down giving you their score. Within the first 2 lines it bluntly read, you're not to come and see us no more. Keep away from our door. Don't come round here no more. What on earth did you do that for? He's quoting them. It's not Lee Thompson saying this to his sister. It's everyone else saying it about her. The song becomes a kind of courtroom drama, and Madness of the defence team, or maybe more accurately, the band are the Greek chorus of Family Shame. It's heavy, and it's made heavier by the way Madness play it. The beat is still there, but it's urgent, sincere, more deliberate. The horns don't gleam, they bruise. The piano plinks are nervous and hesitant. There's something almost gothic about the whole arrangement. Suggs sings it, he always does, but it's Thompson's voice behind it all. His personal story, his discomfort. And that's what really lands. It's a Madness song about a deeply private, traumatic thing, and it doesn't try to be anything else. No dressing it up, no attempts to make it palatable, no Our House nostalgia. It's just this awful moment, frozen in time and blown up on a screen. There's something blunt and direct here that you don't normally get in a Madness song. This isn't cheeky Camden banter, it's a domestic meltdown. And it's being broadcast, top of the pop style, into millions of homes. And yet it's not didactic, it doesn't wag a finger, it's just sad and disappointed and furious in a very quiet, very English kind of way. You feel it most in that cold chorus, repeated with a blank stare. You're an embarrassment, yes, an embarrassment. It's almost too plain to be poetic, and that's exactly why it hits. For Lee Thompson, this song was necessary. He said as much. Madness could do cartoonish ska all day. They were masters of it, but this one had to come out the way it did. There's footage of them playing it on Top of the Pops, and they look off. Not sad exactly, but restrained, respectful. Nobody's goofing around. Sugg sings it deadpan straight to the camera. Thompson stands stiffly, barely moving with his sax. They knew what they were dealing with. In terms of Madness's chronology, Embarrassment comes just after Baggy Trousers, arguably their most beloved pop hit, and right before the return of the Los Palmas 7, which is a cheeky instrumental lark. So this one lands between goofball playground anarchy and lounge act whimsy. And right in the middle, a young girl pregnant, shunned, and a brother trying to process it through a band known for fun. If you're trying to explain Madness to someone who only knows the wedding disco hits, you could do worse than start here. Embarrassment is the crack in the mask, the moment you realise the cartoon isn't just for laughs. The Madness universe has shame, betrayal, race, violence, silence, an underlying sense of real life breaking in. The band wouldn't be the same after this, and neither would Thompson. Madness are an 80s pantheon band, not just for the nutty boy ska, but for the power of their message. Next up, and we're hurtling towards the first Christmas of the decade. So here's a song that manages to be a protest anthem, a Christmas classic, a brass band banger, and a future Christmas compilation must-have all at once. A song with anti-war sentiments and Yuletide bells, trench warfare and festive sweaters, all compressed into 2 minutes and 55 seconds of 1980 British pop oddity. This is Stop the Cavalry by Jonah Louie, and we're going to unpack how a song that wasn't even intended to be a Christmas single ended up becoming one of Britain's most enduring seasonal staples. We last met Jonah Louie in episode 9 with You Will Always Find Me in the Kitchen at Parties, another 1980 anthem. Louie signed to Stiff Records, the same label that housed Elvis Costello, Ian Dury and The Damned, a label that specialised in clever misfits. He records Stop the Cavalry in mid-1980, and it's originally meant to be an anti-war song. Lewie reportedly wanted it to be about the senseless repetition of war through the ages. The same soldiers, the same mistakes, only the uniforms change. But then someone at the label notices a single lyric buried in the second verse. I wish I was at home for Christmas. That's it, that's the line. That's the crack in the door through which Christmas slips in like tinsel in a foxhole. You get jingle bells added to the mix. Suddenly, Stop the Cavalry is being pitched as a holiday single, even though most of it's about nuclear war, trench warfare, and the arbitrary brutality of command. You probably know the sound of this song, even if you don't know who made it. That jaunty umpah brass arrangement and the keyboards, the looped rhythm that sounds like a marching band stuck on a carousel, and Louie's deadpan vocal delivery, a kind of weary British monotone that somehow makes lines like, "Hey, Mr. Churchill comes over here to say we're doing splendidly, but it's very cold out here in the snow, marching to and from the enemy. Land like black comedy." There's not a sleigh bell in sight in the first half of the song, but once you get to that line, I wish I was at home for Christmas, you can almost hear the producers scrambling to exploit it. And it worked. Stop the Cavalry was released in November 1980, and by Christmas it had reached number 3 on the charts. It was held off the top spot by the song we covered last in the previous episode, There's No One Quite Like Grandma. Louie, in an interview with the Guardian newspaper, said the royalties from Stop the Cavalry basically allowed him to buy his house. He still gets a bump in radio play every December. In fact, if you're in the UK, you almost can't escape it in the lead up to Christmas. It's not just on the radio, it's in shopping centres, school plays, TV ads, the background of 1,000 awkward holiday parties. And yet, Stop the Cavalry is not really a Christmas song. It's a pacifist song. It name-checks Churchill, war, fighting through the centuries. This is political. The central character in the song is a soldier trapped in a senseless cycle, ignored by the politicians, marching through the snow, dreaming of something as small and human as being with his loved ones at home. And it's that quiet wish, just one line in the whole song, that transforms the entire mood. Musically, it's got a timeless appeal. The brass arrangement was actually played by session musicians and overdubbed over Louie's original synthesizer demo. The track doesn't lean on flashy production, it leans on repetition and tone. It's quirky but not wacky, melancholy but catchy, weirdly moving but delivered with a shrug. The video is worth checking out too. You've got Jonah Louie standing still while a cavalry of soldiers in Victorian and 20th century uniforms march past in slow motion. It's not high budget, but it captures the sense of futile motion, the absurdity of it all, the kind of grim farce that only Britain could pull off, and which Stiff Records practically made into a genre. So, if you ever wondered how a guy best known for You Will Always Find Me in the Kitchen at Parties ended up soundtracking Christmas in the UK, the answer lies in that one offhand lyric, and the willingness of a sharp-eyed label exec to pivot a war song into a festive classic. Stop the Cavalry is both a protest song and a holiday hit, and it's probably the only time those two concepts have marched side by side so harmoniously. For me, it is the second best Christmas song of the decade, and as a small child at home, is indelibly linked with family Christmases. For track 10 today, does anything come along like our next song anymore? I've often commented that the 80s were more diverse, but in the sense that there was room for stuff unlike anything else. It's 1980 and synths are crawling into the mainstream, two-tone is in full effect, and then up lumbers this burly piano-stomping, knees-up single called Rabbit by Chaz and Dave. And everything changes, well, not everything, but enough to make your granddad smirk knowingly over his warm pint of bitter and cheese ploughdons. This is track 10. This is a song with a hook so obnoxiously catchy, it becomes an irritant, an earworm that burrows deep and doesn't leave. And it's also a song about women talking too much. No, really, that's the premise, but we'll get there. Let's start with the band Chaz Hodges and Dave Peacock, lifelong Londoners, EastEnders, with a staggering musical pedigree you'd never guess from the novelty hit reputation they carry in some circles. Before they were Chaz and Dave, these two had played with heavyweights. Chaz was a session musician with the Outlaws and played bass for both Jerry Lee Lewis and Gene Vincent. Dave played with the likes of Mick Greenwood and the Tumbleweeds. These weren't just a couple of Cockney jokers who wandered into a pub with an old Joanna. These were players, musicians with a long history of doing the rounds before deciding, screw it, let's sing in our own accents and write songs about our own lives. And that was radical. British pop at the time was full of people putting on American voices or hiding behind arty abstraction. But Chaz and Dave came in proud of their roots. And what they created was Rockney, rock plus Cockney. Songs about pie and mash shops and broken down motors and the in-laws. It wasn't nostalgic so much as hyper-local. It was domestic, it was ordinary. It was also occasionally very savage. Which brings us to Rabbit. Released in December 1980 as the second single from their album, Mustn't Grumble, Rabbit was their biggest hit to that point. It reached number 8 on the UK charts in January 1981, a genuine top tenner. But let's get to the contentious bit, the lyrics. Rabbit is Cockney rhyming slang, rabbit and pork equals talk. So when Chaz and Dave sing, "You've got more rabbit than Sainsbury's, it's time you got it off your chest," they're accusing their lady friend, and yes, this is a song about a woman, no ambiguity, of talking too much. The chorus is just a relentless chant of rabbit, 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 until the word loses all meaning and becomes pure rhythm, pure nagging. You won't stop talking, why don't you give it a rest? You've got more rabbit than Sainsbury's, it's time you got it off your chest. Now you was just the kind of girl to break my heart in two. I knew right off when I first clapped my eyes on you. It's funny, it's musically tight, and it's also wildly antagonistic. This woman, we're told, talks too much about everything, an exhausting storm of domesticity. It's hilarious and pointed, and in today's climate, a little uncomfortable. Could you release Rabbit now? Probably not without a think piece backlash. The premise is openly sexist. It's a man complaining about a woman's voice, her presence, her existence as a speaking being. In 2025, it reads like a case study in gendered communication complaints. Why don't you shut up is basically the thesis statement. But in 1980, it was a pub joke writ large, a double act riffing on the comedy of irritation. And yet, musically, Rabbit bounces along quite comfortably. The boogie-woogie piano, the tightly wound rhythm section, the staccato phrasing of the chorus, the way the word rabbit becomes a percussive element in its own right. You can hear the influence of Jerry Lee Lewis for sure, but also Ian Dury, the Kinks, even a hint of punk in the song's gleeful aggression. It's a working class anthem, but not the kind you raise your fist to. It's the kind you shout across a pub table with a warm pint in hand and your mate wheezing with laughter. Chaz and Dave would go on to even bigger hits. Ain't No Pleasing You in 1982 hit number 2, but Rabbit is their cheeky, brash statement piece. It got turned into a lager ad. It became a fixture of British pop culture, and for better or worse, it stuck. There's something so defiantly local about it, so proudly unexportable. No other country could have produced this song, let alone made it a hit. It's a song about frustration and affection and domestic squabbles, filtered through Cockney slang and piano pub swagger. And if you listen too closely, you might even hear that it's not just mocking the woman, it's mocking the man who's too emotionally stunted to handle her. Or maybe that's giving it too much credit. But at least it's never boring. Next, a Christmas song I very much doubt you have ever heard. Is it a Christmas song? Not in the Cliff Richard mistletoe and wine sense. It's Christmas when thoughtful, artful new wave does Christmas, in a hauntingly disturbing yet beautiful way. It's a wintry November, and Susie and the Banshees drop a standalone single called Israel, which sounds like an invocation, a procession, a pageant, and maybe a funeral march all at once. It doesn't appear on any studio album, but it might be one of the most definitive things they ever did. 4.5 minutes of minor key grandeur, pounding toms, and choral vocals that sound like they've been imported from a cathedral with too much gothic architecture and not enough electricity. Israel is heavy, not in the metal sense, heavy in the burden sense. This is track 11. Israel was released on the 28th of November 1980. It entered the UK charts in December and peaked at a measly number 41. So not a smash hit, not a top of the pops regular. But this was never going to be baggy trousers, was it? This is Susie Sue we're talking about, high priestess of eyeliner, icy charisma, and art school contempt. By the time they dropped Israel, Susie and the Banshees had already released 3 albums, The Scream in 1978, Join Hands in 79 and Kaleidoscope in August 1980, each weirder and more scouring than the last. Israel is the connective tissue between Kaleidoscope and Juju, which would drop in 1981 and tear a few more pages out of the Book of Revelation. The song was co-written by the full band lineup at the time, Susie Sue, Stephen Severin on the bass, Budgie on drums and John McGeoch on guitar. McGeoch had just joined the band in time for Kaleidoscope, and the man plays guitar like he's exercising something. His guitar work here is spectral and skeletal, more about atmosphere than riffs. He's giving you bells in a dark forest, not solos. And Israel doesn't open up like a rock song. It opens like a procession. Bass, drums and sleigh bells, just a low, ominous bass riff, then a smattering of that skeletal guitar, and then beautiful voices underpinning the whole thing. An actual 30-piece Welsh choir, by the way, singing in unison like they're preparing for war or a pagan ritual, or Christmas, if Christmas was held in a bunker during an air raid. Then Budgie drops in with the slick rhythm, and the song slips into third gear. Not too fast, not too slow, just effortlessly cool, very Banshees, very ritualistic, no hi-hats, no swing. It's a march, not a dance. The lyrics are opaque, cryptic, provocative. Susie had said she wanted to write something special for Christmas that wasn't twee, and she sings, "Little orphans in the snow with nowhere to call a home start their singing, singing." This isn't, do they know it's Christmas? There's no celebrity chorus, no sanctimony, just the stark image of orphan children in the snow singing not because they want to, but because that's all they have. The song title Israel doesn't appear until the chorus, and even then it's abstract. Israel in Israel, Israel in Israel. That's the refrain, sung with what feels like equal parts reverence and alienation. It's not exactly a protest song, but it's not neutral either. There's a coldness to it, a sense of awe mixed with estrangement, like she's invoking the name of a place that exists somewhere between history and myth. There's no political sermonizing here, no Gaza, no Palestinians, no straightforward narrative, just stark imagery, enormous sound, and an almost spiritual disquiet. It's worth noting that Israel was recorded during the Kaleidoscope tour on a mobile studio set up in Europe. This might explain some of the unpolished urgency in the mix. You can hear the band building something huge and unstable, a wall of mood. Severin's bass is subterranean, melodic in a glum way, and Susie's vocals, she sounds like she's been standing outside in the cold all day and came in only to chant this invocation before disappearing again. Not a scream, but a plea, more like a warning. And that choir, at various points, Christmas, but not modern happy Christmas, not fun jumpers and office parties. This is medieval Christmas, with an army of Krampuses heading your way, or it's Indiana Jones entering the Christmas Temple of Doom. It's revelatory and terrifying in equal measure. Even among Banshees fans, Israel can be a divisive one, too slow, too icy, too abstract. But it's also one of those tracks that gets under your skin and stays there. It wasn't attached to an album at first, just an unmoored monolith floating between records. It would eventually appear on some later reissues and compilations, Once Upon a Time, the singles in 1981 for instance. But in 1980, it was just this wintry missive dropped on an unsuspecting world. A Christmas single in the most Banshee sense of the word. Bleak, gothic, beautiful, and echoing into silence. There's no real resolution to the song. It ends with that same haunted choir fading into the snow. No warmth, no crescendo, just the sound of something ancient walking away. For track 12, we're back with The Clash, and this time with The Call Up, a song that drops in November 1980 and finds the band somewhere between their punk origins and the ever-widening musical territory they decided was theirs for the taking. This is the lead single from Sandinista, their sprawling, experimental, occasionally maddening, occasionally brilliant triple album that clocks in at 2.5 hours and spans punk, reggae, dub, gospel, calypso, hip-hop, jazz, and just about everything else in between. Press play now. The Clash had already established themselves as the conscience of British punk, agitators with a passport and a library card. But The Call Up feels different. It's less about smashing the system with a guitar and more about dismantling militarism with a bass line. The groove is deep, slinky, practically post-punk in its minimalism, built on Paul Simonon's looping bass and backed by what sounds like a disinterested but deliberate xylophone. And the lyrics... calm, measured, almost haunting, a Joe Strummer sounding almost defeated but still defiant. It's up to you not to heed the call up, and you must not act the way you were brought up. The spit-flecked invective and sneer has gone, just a deadpanned, almost hypnotic anti-recruitment message. The call-up, of course, is conscription, military draft, and the Clash aren't having it. The anti-war stance isn't new territory for them, see English Civil War or Tommy Gun, but this is subtler. This is cold-eyed, almost bureaucratic in tone, which makes it even harder when it lands. London Calling in 1979 was much more on the nose. Nuclear war might happen. But by Sandinista and the call-up, the gears are already turning, the clampdown is fully operational, and they're pleading with you quietly but firmly not to march in line. The B-side, Stop the World, continues the theme in its own disjointed, dubby fashion. The whole thing feels like a warning transmitted from the control room of a pirate radio station that's just barely evading detection. And then there's the chart performance, or lack thereof. The call-up peaked at number 40 on the UK singles chart, just scraping into the top 40 in December 1980. For a band as visible and as volatile as The Clash, that was underwhelming. It's not hard to guess why. This wasn't a chant-along, it wasn't an anthem, it wasn't Should I Stay or Should I Go. It was a slow, uneasy groove with an anti-military message and no chorus. Not exactly Radio 1 material. But to view The Clash through a lens of chart success is to miss the point. By 1980, they were already mythologizing themselves as a band that didn't care about hits. They released a triple album and charged the price of a single LP, and CBS was not amused. Mick Jones and Joe Strummer share vocals on the call-up, though it's mostly Joe's show. He sounds subdued but insistent, like a school teacher in a crumbling classroom warning kids not to sign their own death warrants. The production is stripped down but strangely lush. There's space between the notes. It's a reggae-inflected march of unease. You can hear the influence of Jamaican dub producers like King Tubby and Lee Scratch Perry, not in the form of bombastic effects, but in the negative space, the sense of tension suspended in reverb. The call-up doesn't get the same cultural shorthand status as London Calling or Rock the Casbah, but it might be the most quietly subversive song they ever released. It's not yelling, it doesn't need to, it just lays out the facts. There is a rose that I want to live for, although God knows I may not have met her. That line doesn't preach, it warns, and there's a difference. It's also prescient. By 1982, Britain would be at war with Argentina over the Falkland Islands. Military recruitment ads were back on the telly. The spectre of war wasn't hypothetical, it was real. And here were The Clash 2 years earlier, urging kids to think twice. The call-up is The Clash at their most restrained, which also makes them unnerving. It's the sound of dissent gone quiet, not silenced, just measured. And it didn't set the charts on fire, but it didn't need to. Fire wasn't the point, reflection was. In the end, it's not a rallying cry, it's a memo, a reminder, and unlike most memos, you remember it. For our final song of this playlist, well now, if Sheena Easton, Modern Girl is the first proper 80s song, and Enola Gay is the 80s declaring itself as officially open, then this next song is the moment when the new stars of the decade turn up in full swagger and war paint, kick the doors open, and declare that those who've come before them are has-beens before running them out of town. This is by a long way my favourite song of 1980, and if ever anyone does a biopic about New Wave, this should be in the advert. This is Adam and the Ants and Ant Music. What a killer tune to end the show on. The last time we met Adam and the Ants, they were at the gates of glam punk infamy with Dog Eat Dog, a jarringly martial single that cracked the UK top 5 in late 1980. Adam Ant had officially re-emerged from the wreckage of punk and from the ashes of his first band lineup, the one hijacked by Malcolm McLaren in the summer of 1980 to form Bow Wow Wow. That version of the story always smells faintly of brimstone and hairspray, and we've told it before. Ant signs on McLaren as manager, McLaren immediately poaches his entire band, then installs a teenage Annabella Lewin up front and proceeds to launch one of the more contentious new wave provocations of the decade. So yes, let's go ahead and keep that betrayal in our back pocket while we talk about Ant Music, which is either an infectious rallying cry or a glitter-covered uppercut aimed directly at McLaren's face. Or both. Probably both. Ant Music was released on the 28th of November 1980 from Kings of the Wild Frontier, an album already heavy with drumming, war paint, Burundi rhythmics, and a total sense of reinvention. The song climbed the UK singles chart with manic persistence, peaking at number 2 on the 24th of January 1981 and staying there for 2 weeks, blocked only by John Lennon's posthumous Imagine. The sound of Ant Music is all precision chaos, two-drummer assault from Chris Hughes and Terry Meal, Marco Peroni's upbeat guitar, an almost glam pop solo in the middle, and a vocal delivery from Adam that feels like it's trying to recruit you into something. A gang, a movement, a new kind of dance floor religion. Don't tread on an ant, he's done nothing to you, he sings later on, already drawing his tribal lines. There might come a day when he's treading on you. In 1980, post-punk was flirting with dub and death, Thatcherism was rolling in, and here was Adam Ant, redefining pop not with restraint, but with more. More drums, more makeup, more noise. Let's push out the old and bring in the new, and make it proud and make it big. But then there's that chorus, or maybe it's the manifesto. So unplug the jukebox and do us all a favour. That music's lost its taste, so try another flavour. Ant Music. You don't have to squint too hard to hear that as a possible swipe at McLaren. The line, that music's lost its taste, feels particularly pointed when you consider McLaren's whole shtick, managing the Sex Pistols, then Bow Wow Wow, constantly rebranding outrage and calling it subversion. Adam's saying whatever that it is, whatever you pose you're selling, we're done with it. We're plugging in something new. Ant Music is the replacement, not just a genre, but a world, a style, a cult. In the second verse, notice how he sings, while I'm standing here, what do I see? A big nothing threatening me. The way he sneers that a big nothing line it's got to be an impression, and it could be McLaren's nasal tones. In interviews, Adam Ant has been fairly cagey about how much of Ant Music was aimed at McLaren, but the timing is brutal. McLaren stole the original Ants in May 1980, and Dog Eat Dog came out in October, and Ant Music followed barely a month later. The music video for Ant Music hammers it home even further. The band storms a boring disco with some disinterested teenagers and pretty much leads a pop culture coup. By the end, everyone's on their feet dancing to Ant Music because that's the point. Revolution as a party, punk rebranded not as nihilism but fun, joy as rebellion. And McLaren, who always positioned himself as the puppet master of provocation, now had to watch his former protege, whom he'd underestimated and dumped, claim the charts and, more importantly, the cultural space with more flair than he ever could. Bow Wow Wow never got past number 7 in the UK. Ant Music got to number 2. More importantly, Kings of the World Frontier, the album Ant Music hails from, went straight to number 1 on the UK album chart in January 1981 and stuck around in the charts for months after. It was everywhere. Jukeboxes, Top of the Pops, school notebooks scrawled with the Ants' war stripe designs. The New Romantics were coming up behind him, Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran, but Adam Ant got there first, painting his face and making it pop. McLaren might have thought he was controlling the narrative, but Adam wrote a whole new one. So maybe Ant Music isn't just a diss track, it's a call to arms, an aesthetic blueprint, a get-up-and-dance rejection of whatever's come before, but at its heart, it's still a middle finger dressed up as a 3-minute glam anthem. And that's what makes it immortal. Pantheon upper tier, no questions asked. And that brings us to the end of playlist 16 and almost the end of 1980. To that end, our next episode and playlist 17 will be a special. We've just 5 tracks left to go until we've finished the year, and what 5 songs? We've got something very special from Queen, The Police, Visage, Stevie Wonder, and we end the year with Yarborough and Peoples. And then we'll break down the year, talk about what were my favourites, what was the most influential tunes, what were the trends that were happening, hand out some awards, and then we'll talk about what to expect from 1981. As always, if you like what you hear, if you can give us a follow on your platform of choice, I'd really appreciate it. Until then, have a great week and take care.